I respect it.
All right, let's go ahead and reconvene. You guys can eat your snacks while we talk. Okay. The war for American independence is going to be the most significant for you guys to understand. Why?
What we're built on.
Say that again.
What we're built on.
What we're built on. What else?
It's pretty much created the foundation for our country's values.
It did.
It overthrew the world's biggest empire that's ever existed.
Correct.
Started like modern philosophy for politics.
It's also true. It's the freedom of the individual versus a monarch. In every other society, it's a monarch and a bunch of slaves. That's what they amount to, except in America. Men are free. You get the difference. Okay. All right. It's really ultimately what it's going to boil down to. Compare America to any other country on the planet. There's either a monarch or a group of monarchs that are called an oligarchs, and then a bunch of slaves. What's China like today? An oligarchy. Bunch of slaves. What kind of freedoms do we have that other people don't have?
Speech is big.
Freedom. Yeah, go ahead. Freedom to vote. Speech. What?
Freedom to bear arms.
Freedom to bear arms. That's very significant. In any other country, why do they like the people not to have weapons? That one reason. That's the answer. They come up with all kinds of other stupid reasons. Oh, it's not safe. We don't want people murdering each other. Tree aside, every city in our country that has a ban on weapons has the highest murder rate. Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit,
Because I saw this thing, it's
New York
like
City.
they think that if they ban drugs, that all the drugs will go away. So if they ban guns, they'll do the same thing. Like if they ban guns, all the guns will go away, just like how they ban drugs and all the drugs went away. Like,
It's clearly banning drugs makes all the drugs.
It makes it all go away.
so if you ban guns, all the guns go away too.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. And we're going to get into that stuff right now. So let me just cover a few things you just got to be aware of. I'm going to hit them very quickly because I want to have time to discuss quite a few things here. First of all, after the war, beginning in the last years of the war in 1781, were the Articles of Confederation. The United States was governed under the Articles of what? Confederation, which made us a what? By definition, we were a confederacy. Does that sound familiar? We always think Confederacy was the other team in a war between the states. They were, sort of. They are us, we're them, sort of same thing, right? The Confederacy. Where did that idea come from? We were a confederacy. That's what we started as. In 1781, there were the Articles of Confederation. And if you read them, let me just see if I can get the preamble to the Articles of Confederation, just so you can hear the beginning of it. Like the first few sentences, this is the important part. And there's articles. Okay. To all whom these presents shall come, we the undersigned delegates of the states affixed to our names send greetings. Whereas the delegates of the United States of America in Congress assembled did on the 15th day of November, the year of our Lord, 1777, and in the second year of the independence of America, agree to certain articles of confederation and perpetual union between the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, blah, 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 all the different states. Articles of Confederation, perpetual union between the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, blah, 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 blah. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America, quote unquote. Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. Now it's interesting. The first article, other than calling it the United States, so Article 1 it's called the United States. Article 2 is each state remains its sovereignty. It's the very first thing written in the Articles of Confederation. Ironically, it's going to be the last thing written into the United States Constitution under the Bill of Rights. There's deep irony there. What is the nature of the Union at this time in history? Well, and this is 1777, right? Need a pen. And that's a typo in my own album. 17. I got 1781. I guess it was adopted. Okay, so that's right. It's adopted in 1781. It was drafted in 1777. Had to go be ratified by the states. It's a confederacy. In the original construction, where was the bulk of the authority?
States.
In the states. The Union was kind of, think of a giant alliance. This is kind of where the discussion begins. Why am I setting this discussion up now? When is this going to become important?
Civil War.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Now, one of the problems, this created several problems for George Washington in particular, because the states were so loosely connected, it was hard to raise forces for the military. It's hard to enforce rules in the military. It's hard to get anything happening at a national level to defeat an empire the size of England. It made his job extremely hard in a lot of areas, particularly in the areas of getting supplies. Because the Continental Army would come into town and go, we need supplies. Go, well, this is the state of Virginia. You can't have supplies. You got a requisition to the state of Virginia. Yeah, but with the Continental Army, we need the supplies. Yeah, you're not hearing, right? So you can imagine these discussions and how painful it was. So his boys didn't have shoes, they have ammunition, all the things you need to fight a war. And in his mind, the states are fighting so fiercely for their independence. Well, right now we don't have time to talk about it. Right? That's the point. So they have a constitutional convention. They realize the country cannot really hold up on the world stage with the Articles of Confederation. It needs some tweaking. So they decide they're going to redraft the Articles of Confederation. That was the plan. Take the Articles of Confederation, make some changes, and let's move on. That's what they're after. So they launch a commission into the document. They ended up rewriting the entire thing. So some things that happens. December 23rd, 1783, of course, Washington resigns his command, refuses to accept the offered throne. Never before in history we talked about that. Here's an interesting scene in history. I want you to appreciate this scene. The Forgotten Presidents. Open up your book. Page 237 in mine. It's the Forgotten Presidents. Right? We talked to, if you ever want to win a question in Jeopardy, and play Stump the Chump, ask this wonderful question that we like to ask. Who was the first president of the United States? What does everybody always answer? It was Washington. What's that?
Page, sir.
On my book, it is page 238. The Forgotten Presidents, 237, 238. But there were 16 presidents that were president under the Articles of Confederation, and prior to that, during the war, there was a Congress that was the government of the United States for a while, and its president was the president of the United States. They would say, well, okay, yeah, but since George Washington was the first president under the current Constitution, that's a true statement. But you can stop them on that. Why is this a significant point? Let me treat you with an interesting piece of history. Peyton Randolph was the first president of the United States. He was a highly respected man. We talked about him last week, how he could write with both hands, all that. Look at the men on this list. Henry Middleton, there's a man you should know. He actually fought in the war. John Hancock, he fought in the war. He was the rebel leader. Henry Lawrence, he was the first prisoner of war ever captured in war. Right? We're going down the list. All of these guys are fighting. John Jay, founding father, quirk of fate, missing sign the Declaration of Independence because he was out of town at the time. Nevertheless, he's chosen by his peers to succeed Henry Lawrence. On he goes. He was a soldier. Samuel Huntington, Thomas McKean, keep going. John Hanson. Most of these men are regimental commanders. Thomas Mifflin, 1744 to 1800. By an ironic set of providences, Thomas Mifflin served as George Washington's first aide-de-camp at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. And when the war was over, he was the man, as President of the United States, who accepted Washington's resignation of his commission. Thomas Mifflin was the President of the United States when the war ended. And George Washington went to resign his command. This is former aide de camp. This would be like me resigning my command to Thomas. In the scene in history, it's a powerful scene in history. Thomas Mifflin is here. George Washington has his entire command behind him. Remember, they just offered to make him the king. All he'd have to do is snap his fingers like Thanos, and he's got it. But he knows better. He comes up to Thomas Mifflin, his aide de camp. He takes a knee in front of Thomas Mifflin. And he hands Thomas Mifflin his sword. Thomas Mifflin takes George Washington's sword. This is the greatest man in the country. He takes it. And his statement to George Washington is, General, your eyes have grown dim and your hair gray in service to your country, and we shall never forget you. George Washington leaves the field that day wholly intent on returning to Mount Vernon, becoming a farmer, and living his remaining days on this earth in peace. He doesn't want to be part of politics. He's done. He did his duty. He delivered the American people from the tyranny of the British. And he deserves to go home, does he not? He doesn't get that fate, unfortunately. The country begins to decay. There's nobody to unify it when George Washington steps off the scene. There's a lot of, nobody's certain who the real leaders are. Nobody trusts anybody. There's nobody at a national level that everybody trusts, except for one man, George Washington. So they have to turn back again to George Washington and say, sorry, you have to do this. You have to come here and you have to oversee the delegation that assembles the Congress. He doesn't want to do it, but he knows he must do it. But more than that, he knows for a fact that he is so enormously influential with everybody in the country, and even among the delegates that show up to the Constitutional Convention, that he refuses to speak at the convention. The only time he speaks is when I'll take that off for a second. We won't need that again for a while. The only time he speaks is he does the opening prayer, and he's the moderator. He becomes the moderator of the discussions. He says, the chair recognizes the delegate from the state of New Hampshire, the state of Vermont, whatever, all the different states. That's his job. Now, coming into this convention, there's some challenges. There's 55 total delegates. Remember this number. 55 total delegates. People will say that our nation was not a Christian nation. Of these 55 total delegates, I remember this specifically, 53 of them were in denominational churches in the United States. And in those days, it's not like a church here where you just show up to a church. In those days, for you to go to a church, you had to profess the Nicene Creed and whatever the confessions were of the church, specific to join and be a member in good standing. And if you didn't behave as such and you didn't show up to church and Sunday school and look like a Christian, smell like a Christian, they wouldn't keep you around as a member. Were we founded as a Christian nation? The answer is undecidedly, yes. I remember somebody, George Grant had listed at one point off, he was an author, the numbers. It was something like there were 15 Methodists, 20 some odd Presbyterians, 12 Lutherans, 2 Baptists, when it was all down the line. He knew them by name. And every denomination was there. They were all there. The major denominations. That's who these guys were. It was like 2 of them were like, there were a couple of them was like, one was like 2 Catholics, I think, and something else. But they were all Christian denominations. With me? Okay. There's some guys notably absent, and this is important. Patrick Henry does not show up because he smelled a rat. That's a serious blow. Patrick Henry, right? The firebrand that got us into the war. Give me liberty or give me death. That guy. Like, I'm not going. This doesn't smell right to me. Gouverneur Morris, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. Okay, who wrote the Constitution? Ready for this? Who wrote it?
Benjamin gave credit for it.
Franklin did some of it. Who does everybody like to say wrote the Constitution?
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, except he was in France. He wasn't even there. Didn't even make it to the Constitutional Convention. He was overseas in France at the time. Something I should add to your list. You guys haven't seen the movie Hamilton? This is a side project. You don't have to, but if you get the opportunity, I think we have other movies to watch, but Hamilton it's a musical. It's a good one. Done to modern light. It's like a rap musical, but it's really well done. It's funny because the left put the musical together because they thought they'd tick off the right, and the right came back and said, "This is great. You did it perfect." Because they were talking about immigrants and stuff. Yeah, it's like we're all immigrants. Who here is an immigrant in this country? Put your hand up. Y'all are. And you got to go back a couple hundred years, at least. For me, I got to go back to 1920, I think. But the rest of y'all, you may have to go back to 17, whatever, 16, whatever. You're all immigrants. How do we get here? Anyway, okay, I digress. Thomas Jefferson was missing. The primary drafters of the Constitution were Governor Morris, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. Those are the guys who truly wrote the Constitution. That's it. Thomas Jefferson wrote what?
Declaration of Independence.
Bingo. That he did write. He's good. And Ben Franklin had significant input on that. All right. There were two groups, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. As their names imply, what do Federalists mean?
That they believe that the U.S. should be primarily like one united nation instead of individual states with more authority.
Good. Well, Federalists, yes, believe in strong central power. Anti-Federalists, by definition, think
Spread out power to the state.
that's right, weak central power. Essentially, that's the debate. How strong should the central government be, and how weak how strong should the states be? How strong is the central federal government today in our country?
Yeah, very strong.
Exceedingly strong. How much strength does the states have? Although there have been times that states have stood up to the federal government. Let me give you one of my favorite ones in history. I grew up in the state of Arizona. Sometime around 1960 something. Who wants this research job? Walker. Look up the case between Arizona versus California, circa 1960, over water rights. Tell me what you know, Jensen. The Hoover Dam, which is where? They started the dam problem. That's correct. They started the dam problem. Anytime you go in the Hoover Dam, you can use all kinds of damn jokes, and it's damn funny. So anyway, we'll leave that alone. We'll leave it alone. You don't get it. All right, I can get away with it. I do like two of those. If I do three, then it's overboard. So I got two of them. Here's what happens: Arizona and California are both fed out of the Colorado River. Colorado River comes to a head and around near Nevada at the Hoover Dam. You with me? Right? That controls where the water gets split off to. Interestingly enough, it's in Nevada, but it's right there near the borders of the states. California was taking too much of the water, and Arizona didn't have enough. Arizona launched complaints and petitions to California. California refused to acknowledge Arizona. Arizona decided to mobilize their National Guard and seize control of the dam. Imagine that. You're on the dam on duty in the morning, and all of a sudden, a bunch of guys with guns. Yeah, we're here to take over. Turn that knob a little bit that way. Okay. And all of a sudden, some water started flowing to Arizona. California didn't have enough water. California got upset about it. What do you think California did? They mobilized their National Guard. They send it up to the Hoover Dam. You're about to have a shootout at the Hoover Dam over some damn water. Right? You with me? It's a lot of water. So I guess that's three jokes. That's probably one too many. So I'll stop right there. They get up to the Hoover Dam. The federal government, I forget who was, I feel like it was Truman at the time, had to drop airborne troops in between them to separate the two of them and keep them apart, and he de-escalated the situation. But consider that. Two governors activating their own National Guards. We're just going to solve this problem the old-fashioned way. Our boys, your boys, Let's have it out. Could have gone down that way. I'll give you another case, another interesting case in history. This is when I was in high school. I remember this. Sometime around 1988-ish, the speed limit generally was accepted in those days to be 55. The slogan was "Stay alive, drive 55." Right? 55. Speed limit highway was 55. Well, the state of Arizona, if you've ever driven around the state of Arizona, it's a lot of empty desert. And driving 55 miles an hour between Tucson and Phoenix, Arizona, my lands, is a long and boring drive at 55 miles an hour. There's nothing there. It's just empty desert, hard to hurt yourself. So the state of Arizona said, well, you know what? Our state, we're going to raise the speed limit to 65. Raised it to 65. Federal government got wind of it, said, you can't do that. Said, well, yeah, we can. But no, it was the federal space. Said, no, this is the state of Arizona. Not wanting a fight, the federal government said, okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We've been thinking about this for a while anyway. We're going to go ahead and raise the speed limit to 65, and then therefore we'll justify what you just did. See what happened there? State of Arizona said, yeah, no, you're missing the point. They went ahead and raised the speed limit to 75. Yeah, we're in charge. Our state is going to be, and so now the federal government gets ticked off. They said, okay, Arizona, you understand that that's a federal funded highway. Yeah, it runs through the state of Arizona, but it's federal money that builds it. So either you lower the speed limit or we're going to cut your federal funding. Serious challenge. State of Arizona, to demonstrate its independence, said, I'll tell you what, go ahead, cut our federal funding. We'll cut the highway at the border and put toll roads up. You want to drive around Arizona? You have any idea how big Arizona is to get all the way up around Arizona? Puts you many, many hundreds of miles out of your way. The federal government finally backed down. They said, okay, you win. Now, there's other cases where the federal government has won, but Arizona, Texas, you'll see it time to time in Kentucky, Tennessee, a lot of the southern states still have that reminder that, yeah, we have some authority here. Okay, so these debates go back and forth as to whether or not. And by the way, there's some readings that I do need you guys to do. They're in your reading assignment. Hold on. They're important things because there's some debate there. Here they are. Page, whatever page this is, the last page of, I don't know what they are. I guess I should have numbered the pages. The last part of page 3 in your outline. I want you to read the following. Of the Federalist Papers, the short essays, numbers 3, 5, 8, 18, 24, and 47. You write those down. And then I want you to read the Anti-Federalist Papers, the same numbers. Federalist, Anti-Federalist Papers. 3, we get this right. 3, 5, 8, 18, 24, 47. Come next week with a brief, all I want to know is as you read that thing, what was the debate about? Federalist Paper number 3, what was it about? Okay, it's not going to take you long to realize some of these things are on all kinds of things that like we faced today. I won't spoil it. But here's how this went down. Technically, originally the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists had switched names, but I won't even go into that. That's too much detail. The Federalists and Anti-Federalists are having a debate during the Constitutional Convention. The Constitutional Convention is sequestered inside a building. No media is allowed in. Nobody's allowed in. They won't let anybody take notes out of the building and share it with the public during the convention. Here's why. Why? No. They want them to have the ability to change their mind and have discussions and not have them be influenced and wrangled from the newspapers and politicians outside going, what do you mean he's flipped positions on that? They want them to have free flow discussion because they're forming a country and they got to figure out how to form it. It's a big deal. So instead, what they do is a couple of the guys, like Patrick Henry is one of them, Governor Morris, others, John Adams. These guys are they're under pseudonyms. They come up with these pseudonyms and they start publishing articles to have these debates in the newspapers. So the Federalist Paper number 1 will come out. and I'll have some point that they're arguing. Might be about like, freedom of religion. And then the anti-federalists will come up with some point why the way that's written isn't gonna work. And it's back and forth. So there's 85 of these things that go back and forth. And what I want you to get the flavor out of this is the debates that happen. Every one of the things that we're facing today, gun control, speech, freedom of religion, the power of the states, taxation, all of these things are discussed by our founding fathers 200 and how many years ago? 70 some odd years ago, right? Whatever, what was it now? 250 years ago. They're having the discussion. Same discussion. You're going to read some of these Federalist papers, you can go, wait a minute, when was this written? We can have this, you can read, they're great papers to reference. I highlight a few of them that are interesting because they're going to be important. All right, now let's get into it. Here we go. Constitution. Open up your books to the United States Constitution. Okay. 133. I want to begin by pointing something out. Remember, we started as a confederacy. Okay. 45 minutes to get through the Constitution. That's gonna be hard. You guys know the preamble to the Constitution? I remember there used to be a cartoon back when I was a kid. What was it called? That's it. Schoolhouse Rock. Thank you, Jensen. Perfect. Schoolhouse Rock. Yes. I'm only a bill. Someday I hope to be a law. That guy, right? You remember some of these? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. More perfect than what? Than the Articles of Confederation. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. There it is, the word welfare in the Constitution. Hence why it's obviously got to be legal in the intention of the framers to have welfare. What? Provide for the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Oh. Okay. There are 8 sections, 9 sections of the Constitution. I'm going to give it to you in broad sweeps. Article 1 is going to talk about the legislative power. Who's the legislature? All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Why did they do that? Why is there a Senate and a House of Representatives? Isn't that just confusing?
Dilute power and also for the bigger states to have big voice, but also the smaller states to have some voice.
That's correct. State of Rhode Island said, if every state had the same number of delegates, that means the itty bitty state of Rhode Island would have just as much power as the massive state of Virginia. We Virginia boys don't agree with that. There's a lot more of us Virginia boys. Itty state of Rhode Island. That just doesn't seem fair. Of course, Rhode Island's like, well, why would we let you guys take away our independence of a little state just because you have a bunch of people? You see the argument on the other side. Almost didn't work until they determined, okay, we'll have 2 houses. One based on population and one with even distribution of votes. Senate, two delegates per state. The reason they have 2 is you don't want to have someone alone. You gotta have somebody who reminds them, we're Kentucky boys. We don't do that sort of stuff, right? Whatever it is. And then the other one based on population. You with me? Okay. Legislature, the House of Representatives, and then how they choose themselves. In here is all the rules on how to elect these guys, right? When you get to election law, that's all in here. We're going to get into election law in a little bit. One of the problems that we have is at the time of the drafting of this, states were expected to not have what's called the general ticket. So the way it used to work, and it works still in 1 or 2 states in the union, is each county, I think it is, cast their votes by county or by city or however they break it down, by district. And if you're campaigning right now, so like now, if you're campaigning in the state of California, if you win the number of popular vote, you win the whole state. That wasn't the way it used to be. It used to be they divide the vote by district. You get 20 districts, 17 of them vote for Trump, 13 of them vote for Biden. That's how they split it. 17 here, 3 here, not 20 to all the one guy. Make sense? That was important because as soon as nowadays, like you look at say California, all you have to do is win the big cities. You don't have to worry about the rural areas and not enough votes there. So all of the politics are pointed at the cities. Does that make sense to you? It's called general ticket. It's confused, some confused looks.
It's that it doesn't seem as basic.
Yeah, that's the point. It used to be intended, let's say, I don't know, let's just say the state of Kentucky. Let's see if I can draw this thing decent. So this is it's a massive, horrible state of Kentucky. I don't know, how many votes do we have? I feel like we've got 40, maybe. I don't know. Let's just pick a number. I mean, let's just say it's 30. Say it's 30 votes, right? And let's say Louisville here, well, just by population, is about a third of the population of Louisville area. So they'd have 10 votes here. And then Frankfurt and Lexington area probably has another 10, and there's 10 more in the rest of the state. Well, it used to be if you're campaigning here, if you win this, you get 10, you win this, you get 10, and then you get 10 for the rest of the state. However it breaks down, you get 2 here, 1 there. One person, candidate A, could earn, well, he got 10 votes here, and you got like 5 there, so you got 15, and candidate B got 15, so that's how they cast him. They'll cast 15 votes. They've changed it now where whoever gets the majority, if it was 16 to 14, candidate B wins. Candidate A wins, rather in this case. Sorry, candidate A wins. And he maybe did that because all he did is he campaigned in this city and this city. He didn't worry about the rural areas, not enough votes. What's the difference between campaigning in a city and campaigning in a rural area? What do the city people care about?
The needs of the city is a lot different than the needs of rural areas.
Exactly. It's a huge problem. Huge problem. And that's exactly how politics have been. Is all of the politics are city politics. They don't care about the farmers. They don't care. Why don't they not care?
Because they don't have enough population to make us.
They don't have enough votes. And the way the votes break down now, they don't have to talk to those people. All you gotta do is promise the people in the city free money through welfare or whatever other system you want to hand free money, they'll vote for you. What? Yeah. All right.
We need a change.
Yeah, we need. When did it change? Gradually over time. They moved to the general ticket. Okay, then it talks about how to choose these guys. But here's the important thing. Remember this. Remember this. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. By the way, I want to point out one thing in Section 2 real fast. One thing that matters here. Section 2 originally talks about that they shall tax the states, not the individuals. That was changed in the 16th Amendment. Okay. It used to be that you wouldn't get, there's no such thing as income tax. They tax the state of Kentucky, and then Kentucky would tax people. And usually they would do it almost exclusively through sales tax. Very simple, no deductions, no loopholes, none of that. You sell something, you charge tax on it. You didn't need a CPA, you didn't need an attorney. How much you sell that for? $1? Give me 10 cents. Give me 10 cents. There you go. Perfect. Right? No discussions. Now it's a mess. And if you're smart enough about your taxes and you're rich enough, you literally don't have to pay taxes. Fortunately, I'm finding that out. I'm learning how to get around legally, play their stupid game, and pay less than what I would call my fair share of taxes in my drawer. Does that make sense? That's what happens today, but let's avoid taxation for that. Article 1, Section 8, the most important part of the entire United States Constitution. Why? What's in here? Article 1, Section 8. What does it say?
All the power goes to Congress.
That's right. The Congress shall have the power to. What's the first thing it says?
Lay and collect taxes.
Lay and collect taxes. Who collects taxes? The Congress. Can the president create a tax? Can the Supreme Court create a tax? Nope. They can. Next paragraph down, what do they have the authority to do? Borrow money. What's the next one they can do?
Regulate.
With
Foreign nations.
For foreign nations, they regulate commerce. Isn't that interesting? I love President Trump, but what's been all over the news recently? Tariffs. Wait a minute. Why is the president regulating commerce? Did I read this right?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. What's next? Establish uniform naturalization. What's the next one after that? To coin money and regulate the value thereof. Hold on. What do they have the authority to do? What does it mean to coin money?
To mint it.
Right. What's a coin? Those little circular things, quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies. What did money used to be made of? Primarily.
How far back?
Is that
How
copper?
far back were we going?
Not, you don't have to go too far back, 1960 something. Silver and gold. Isn't there a song? Silver and gold. Silver, I don't know, something like that.
That's from the Sandflower movie.
And gold.
That's it. Silver and gold. There you go. It made it real simple. What was the advantage of silver and gold? So if I brought silver to somebody in the shape of a coin, if I do it today, what's the value of that silver? Why does he want that coin?
Because there's only so much silver in the world and that number will never go up.
Or very little.
Yeah.
You know, you find a little bit new silver each year, but compared to the increase of the population, yeah, you're right. But what can be done with silver?
It be melted in the shape.
You can do all kinds of things. There's all kinds of industrial applications. There's jewelry applications. It's got value. What about gold? Same thing. Generally speaking, a good number to carry around the back of your head. Gold is traditionally 60 times the value of silver by weight. Roughly. A 1 ounce gold coin versus a 1 ounce silver coin traditionally should be 60 times. If you're ever going to buy the stuff, you kind of want to look at that factor. Say, has it gone up or how far is that spread? If it's less, it has been less over the last, I haven't looked at it recently, but the last few years, silver's been a good deal. At some points, gold goes up, goes down. It's very good. There's other precious metals. But anyhow, the whole point was all of the coins that we were trading prior to, I think it was 1960 something, had silver in them. The right amount of silver to constitute a quarter. They varied it at first, there did varying amounts over the years. As the quarter got less and less, they put less silver in it and they put it into other figures. How many of you have silver and gold coins? You should have some. You should. Okay. What do we have now? Do we have coin money? Yeah, well, we have some of that. It's fun. It's actually, you pick them up, they're really lightweight side by side. We have these things. What is that?
Card.
An IOU.
It's an IOU.
It's a card to get an IOU.
What is this? Is this money?
Worthless paper to represent something that it can't represent anything.
One can say it's worthless, but if I take it across the street and I hand it to the guy on the side of the counter and ask for a chocolate bar, is he going to give me one?
Well, it used to be you could turn that into that much worth of silver or gold, but now you can only keep that as a piece of paper.
True, except that it does have value as long as what? What gives it value?
US government.
Long as that exactly what you said. Not necessarily the US government. It does say on here, the United States of America, $20. This note is legal or $10 for all debts, public and private. And it says across the top, Federal Reserve note. What is the Federal Reserve? Are they run by the United States government? No. Well, wait, let me read this again. Who has the right to coin and regulate the value of money? What about the Federal Reserve?
Don't say nothing about
Who are
that.
those guys?
Bankers.
Are they in here? I've read this thing over. I'm pretty sure they're not in here. So who owns our money?
Not the US.
Not the United States government. Anybody see a problem with that?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody heard of Bitcoin? Does the government like Bitcoin? Why?
It's not.
Because the Federal Reserve can't control it. Nobody can control it because it's regulated by a computer program that's been released and nobody can stop it because of what's called blockchain technology. That is what gold, and same thing that happens with gold, right? I have physical gold at my house. Is it likely the value of that will ever go away? No. Why?
Well, we learned a good way to.
Because you can't make more of it. Can I make more paper money?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. You ever see on the news? Those things are just flipping off that machine. They're printing money like it's out of style. Okay, let's skip that one. Let's keep moving on. There's more powers. Okay, provide punishment for counterfeiting. Yeah. Establish post offices and roads. That's another story, but I won't get into that one. Promote progress of science and useful arts. To constitute tribunals inferior. This is an important one. Highlight this. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. That's important. Under whose authority is every court other than the Supreme Court? Congress. Free aside. Does Congress ever get upset because the Supreme Court like overturns their laws?
Yeah.
How can Congress respond? There's two ways, but we haven't gotten into yet. All of the appellate courts that go up to the Supreme Court, if they don't like any of those decisions, the Congress can dissolve them instantly, the stroke of a pen. You just get rid of them. Now, Mr. Supreme Court, you want to handle all of your caseload? Like all of it? Like every single little case that comes up? We'll just put an end to this little game of hearing every case that comes up the chain. They have that authority. They forget that. Let's move on. Define and punish piracies, felonies. Ooh, wait, next one down. Very, very important one. What's the next one down on page 140? First three words. To declare war. They have the authority to declare war. Can the President of the United States declare war? The President of the United States put troops into battle without the authority of Congress. Then how come it happens all the time?
Let it have Congress doesn't only work if people, what's the.
How many wars have we had in our country? Whole bunch. How many declared wars?
3.
You ready for this?
Be the fires.
What do you think the 5 wars are that we've actually had? There's 5 that we have actually been declared wars in our entire United States military history.
Revolutionary War.
Okay, technically yes, but that wasn't under the Constitution. So that one, that's true, but it wasn't one of the 5 I was talking about. World War I and World War II were both declared wars.
States.
Nope, they never declared war. Ironically, that was one of the problems.
Is war and terror one?
Nope, not a declared war. Not a legally declared war by the Congress.
1812.
1812 was one of them. That was legitimately declared war. There's 3. Got 2 left. I'll give you a hint. They both happened prior to World War I. Spanish-American War, that was another declared war. There's 1 left. Happened after the Spanish-American War. And shortly before the war between the states.
Mexico.
War in Mexico. 5 states. Let me read off the list of the wars. They weren't declared wars. Ready? This is fun. The Quasi-War, the Barbary Wars, the raids on slave traffic, 1820, Paraguay, 1859, intervention in the Russian Civil War, 1918, Lebanon, 1958, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Civil War was declared by the president. It was never declared a war. All of those wars weren't actual legally declared wars. So how the heck did we get into them? Some of those were some ancient wars. I can tell you how we got into the modern ones. But think about that. Some of those, Paraguay, Russian, well, let's see, Paraguay, raided the slave traffic, 1820, Quasi-Wars, Barbary Wars. Interesting. Let's go on. Move on. I'm pausing here because this is so important for you to understand what the authorities are. What's the next one down?
Armies, provide a navy.
Read that whole thing, but that's correct.
To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money that shall use shall be for a longer term than 2 years.
Correct. Provide and maintain a navy. Wait a minute. Anybody ever served more than 2 consecutive years in the United States Army? Huh. 2 years. You can get money for 2 years. Boom. What was the intention? Why could they only get army funds for an army for 2 years?
That there wouldn't be a constant army presence.
That's right. It wouldn't be a standing federal army. Why didn't they want a standing federal army?
People rely too much on the government. Those things
Yeah,
gives too much power to the government.
too much power. They're afraid of a standing federal government or standing army. What happens when you get a standing army? Kings have standing armies. What do they do with them?
Use them as power.
Or squeeze the people.
If the army relies on money for the government, then they're going to be a lot more loyal to the government. And if they're citizens and they get their money from the state, they're going to be a lot more loyal to the state, to the people.
That's right. Now, they did provide for a standing navy. Why? Why would that be different?
It can't really like attack Kentucky with the Navy.
Exactly. Yes, you can control the coast, but come on, bring your navy in about 5 miles. Let's bring it on in.
So you can protect from other people.
That's correct. There was no threat perceived from the Navy. Navy really couldn't be used against its own people, but the Army certainly could. Get the idea. So where was the Army supposed to come from?
From the states.
States. We see this all the way up to the war between the states. The names of the units that go into the field are names like the 1st Virginia, the 20th Maine, the 2nd Maryland. On and on the list goes. 33rd Illinois, the names of regiments, right? That's where they come from. And what happens when the 20th Maine goes into battle? Who's going into battle?
Right.
Bunch of boys from Maine. And when they went into battle on Little Round Top, the 20th Maine, of the 1,000 that joined the regiment, by the time they hit Little Round Top and came off of it, if I remember the numbers correctly, there were 123 left. So the state of Maine was missing a lot of boys. Just because that unit got positioned in the wrong parts of the field at Fredericksburg and then again at Gettysburg. We're going to get into that history in a while. And so after a while, they said, yeah, we probably should put all the Maine boys in one unit together because in one day you have a whole brigade of Maine boys. State of Maine might be missing a whole lot of people. But that's important to know. The whole idea was the states provide the militaries. It protected them from a encroaching federal government. Do states today have militaries?
Sir.
Yes, they do. What do we call them?
National Guard.
National Guard. They can be activated by the governor and have to report to the governor of state. Is that a good thing?
Yes, sir.
Why?
That way you don't have only the federal government having all the armies and the states just don't have anything to defend themselves with.
That's correct. Has our National Guard in the state of Kentucky been, when's the last time it was mobilized?
On the right.
I remember it in 2020 during the riots. Governor Bashir, as much as I don't like the man, he waited way too long he let the riots go for a while. Then finally they got out of control. Congress put pressure on him to activate the guard, and he did. He sent him down to Louisville. I remember being downtown when the guard was downtown. I came out of dinner one night and the street was like empty down the street. And there's Humvees on one end and guys with rifles. And I guess just 2 blocks over, they're throwing bricks at them. And National Guards got their riot shields and whatever else. And they're fighting back. And it was a whole thing. I don't remember if anybody got shot or not. I don't remember. They probably should have shot a few guys. That would have put a quick end to it, but they didn't. That was a lawful use of the National Guard. Let's talk about what's going on in California right now. Riots. What's the state of California doing about their riots? They activated their National Guard. They're refusing to. Isn't that interesting? Why?
Because they don't think they need it.
Politician.
Because the politician is obviously in favor of the riots. He wants the riots. So what's Trump doing?
Sitting in the federal part.
He's sending in the United States Marine Corps into Los Angeles. Well, has that ever been done before?
Maybe for the Ronnie King.
Yeah. It was done. The LA riots back in, whatever, what, in 98? Got the next assignment, next. Walker, next up is Caleb. Caleb, I want you to research the LA riots. There's this year, but I want you to hit the ones from before. And I can't remember, I feel like it was 1998. Pretty sure that's correct. And I remember the Marines going in, and I remember it going bad. In some ways, it went great in others. Fantastic. Order was restored. I believe some boys got schwacked, if I'm not mistaken. I had a friend of mine who went back as a platoon commander. He's my fellow platoon commander. His platoon got deployed to Guantanamo Bay to contain a riot of Haitian refugees. They decided to test the Marines. This would have been 1993. He ordered his Marines to fix bayonets. That's a command you wouldn't expect to give in 1993. Free aside, by the way, I like getting a joke. I get a kick out of this. Osama bin Laden, not Osama bin Laden. Barack Obama was talking about getting rid of the bayonet. So we don't need a minute. The last bayonet charge was, and I think he quoted like World War One. Anybody know when the last actual bayonet charge actually?
In 1990s.
I don't know the exact date. I was in Fallujah.
2003 in Fallujah, Iraq. The platoon commander that was retaking the northwest corner of the city of Fallujah ordered a bayonet charge into the building. He put them on bayonets and he ran them into the building. There's one squad in his platoon had gotten isolated, and the AQI, the Al Qaeda had, it was a half hour. It was like I remember it was 30 full minutes of hand to hand fighting inside this building. Actually, used to live right up the street from that building for about a year when I was in Iraq. Yeah, well, 7 months while I was in Iraq. Anyhow, he ordered the rest of his platoon to fix bayonets, and he sent them in the other back door. And a bayonet fight broke out in the middle of Fallujah, Iraq in 2004 amidst machine guns.
Why did they choose these bayonets?
Because it's close quarters and they didn't want to shoot their own men. And they knew that, as they busted in, they'd be shooting, but as they rounded the corner, they realized they could get in a knife fight that quick. Imagine clearing this building. I mean, if I'm going from this room to this room and I bust in, anticipating shooting somebody, it starts right there, it jumps on me, I'm now in a bayonet fight. Right? Or I may have to turn on, stick them and move, right? Bayonet fight. It's the way to go. In close quarters, maybe that's interesting. Okay. Let's keep going. To provide for what's the next one? Make rules for the government and regulations of naval and land forces. Provide for the calling forth of the militia to execute the laws of the Union. What is the militia? There's another military force.
It's inside the states, but it's not state run. It's just people.
That's correct. Are you allowed legally to form your own militia?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are. You can have Thomas Sturgeon's Sturgeon Boys if you want to. The Sturgeon Boy Militia. That could be it. It could be you and Walker, and you could be your own unit. Declare yourself a militia. Completely legal. It's authorized. To exercise the legislation, move forward. Make all laws necessary to proper carrying and execution of foreign powers, blah, blah, blah. That's it. That's the end of it. If it's not in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, it is not a legitimate power of the Congress of the United States. Who makes the laws in this country?
Congress.
That's a short list, isn't it? Relatively speaking. There's a few things in there, right? Military, regulate money, regulate commerce, post offices, punish some counterfeiters, plants, useful arts, exercise legislation. That's about it. That's their powers. That is the meat and potatoes of the Constitution right there. Article 1, Section 8. If you want to challenge the law, say, hey, can you show me where Article 1, Section 8, they have the authority to do that? Education. By what authority does the federal government oversee education? Go right here, Article 1, Section 8. Show me which of these laws here points to education. They would probably argue this one, to promote the progress of science and useful arts. But it says, by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. That's actually not that. That is actually patent rights. That's it. They don't. What happens if they want more authority? What happens if they want to vote themselves the authority to have more authority? What do they have to do?
Pass it through another branch first.
Well, there's actually a provision for that. So hold on. Article 5 of the Constitution. Everybody turn the page over to Article 5 here. If they want to change it, they want more powers. Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. If you want to change something in the Constitution, 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House just to propose the amendment. Then what happens? On the application of legislators of 2/3 of several states shall call a convention. So then what do you need? First of all, it has to be proposed by 2/3 of the legislatures. It has to go out to all the states. 2/3 of the states have to say, yes, we like this. Let's call a constitutional convention to discuss it. If so, shall call a convention proposing amendments, which neither shall be valid to all intents and purposes, ratified by the legislatures of, here you go, 3/4 of the several states. How many of the states?
3/4.
It's a lot of people, boys. You want to change something in the Constitution legally? It takes a lot of people. Hence why they usually just skip all that, because it's really cumbersome. We want to have some extra authorities. We're just going to vote some. We're just going to we're just going to say, hey, look, let's take compulsory attendance. Anybody know what compulsory attendance is? It says if you're not in school up to the age of 18, you can be arrested.
Wait, what?
Where's that? It's not in here. It says you have to learn certain things in school. Where's that? That's not in here. Oh, whole bunch of stuff that is laws that you guys obey that are, wait for it, unconstitutional. Be acquainted with your law. Now there are some amendments in here, so a few things get changed. Taxation being one of them, so we can kind of go back into that in a few minutes. But I want to start you here. Okay. Now let's whip through the rest of the Constitution. Article 2. Ready for this? If Article 1 is the power of the Congress, what do you think Article 2 is?
Executive power.
Executive power of the United States. Let me tell you one thing that's not in the executive power of the United States. The right to declare war is not there. It's not in the authorities for the U.S. Constitution. For the executive power is Article 2. What does he have the power to do? What's the primary purpose of the President of the United States? Got a few.
Now veto.
Yeah, he has the right to veto certain rules because a lot of things get sent up to him. He has the right to veto if a law goes to him, right? So if it's a law that passes by a close margin, he can veto it. He doesn't veto it, or if he vetoes it, it can go back. If they pass it by 2/3 majority, they don't need the president anymore. Like, fine, you want to be a jerk? We're just going to vote it by 2/3. Tough noogie box. Right? You with me? What else can he do? Rule the president of office. Let's see. Here it is. Article 2, Section 2. There's his powers. The president shall be what? When? And then what's it when? Called in the actual service of the United States. Boom. It's his job to process a war. So once a war has been declared, it's turned over to the president of the United States. Who does the president of the United States usually turn it over to?
Generals.
Wait a minute, there's somebody in between there. Somebody on his cabinet.
Secretary of Defense.
Secretary of Defense used to be called the Secretary of War. That's what it is. So he'd hire somebody on his staff, say, okay, look, I'm not a real good tactician and whatnot, or strategist. Okay, you the guy, you go fight that war and you win it. I'm gonna keep people happy and lots of speeches and tell them why we're winning and why we have to fight the war and remind them that. You actually go forth and win it. And who was most recently the Secretary of Defense under President Biden? Anybody know what kind of person he was? He was an alternate lifestyle homosexual trans person.
They're not great at fighting.
He had no idea how to fight. Not a combatant. He was a political appointee. And what was his focus during the entire Biden administration?
Make train people more prominent in the military.
Called DEI. That's what he promoted. Spent the last 4 years driving the military nuts. What's the first thing that President Trump, why he had JD Vance, what's the first position he pulled? He removed the Secretary of Defense, the trans guy, and I forget who he put in. I forget the guy's name, but he was a major. Reached all the way down to the major ranks to find a good man, made him Secretary of Defense, who has since cleaned office really fast. But incidentally, technically, they don't have the authority to do that. Why? When does he have that power?
During war.
During a war. Are we at war? Not a legal war. Technically under the global war on terror, but it's not a legally declared war. Go back to that one. Keep going. What else can he do? He shall have by and power. Here you go. Next paragraph. He shall have by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. What can he do? With the advice and consent of the Senate to make what? Treaties. So I provide. So here's where his main powers come in. He shall nominate, advice and consent of the Senate, and shall appoint ambassadors and other public ministers and consuls and judges of the Supreme Court. He nominates, right? He shall nominate. Nominate. Highlight these things in your book. It's important. Consuls, judges of the Supreme Court. So anytime there's a vacancy in the Supreme Court, President nominates another guy. Senate says, no, thank you. Give us another one. How about this guy? Nope, no, thank you. No. It happens all the time. You get into these deadlock votes over who's going to be a Chief Justice. It happens all the time. What's the next one? He can have the power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions. In Section 3, recommended their consideration of such measures. Section 4, the president and vice president is also though shall be removed from office on impeachment, so he can be impeached, and conviction of treason, of bribery or other high crimes. So how do you get rid of them?
Gotta catch you doing something wrong.
Was Trump impeached? No. He was tried.
Yeah.
And what happened? He was not convicted, so he was not impeached. Clinton was also, I think, not impeached. I think the last one that was impeached, there's been a couple that have been impeached. Okay, that's it. There's his power. There you go. Any questions? On the powers of the, okay, Article 3. What do you think Article 3 is then? Judicial. Exactly. Article 3 is the judicial power. Now, here's the kicker. This is the most important one for you guys to understand. Well, actually, the most important one is Article 1, Section 8. Let's read this together. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may, from time to time, ordain and establish. How long do they supposed to hold their offices? You know, it says it specifically. The judges, both the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during
Good behavior.
good behavior. So it could be life. What happens if it's not good behavior?
Pick up
It can be removed. How?
5 lessons.
By the Senate. Another point for life. If Senate doesn't like them, they can remove them. Just say, well, you don't have good behavior. You're fired. Why? If the Supreme Court gets all uppity and won't let certain laws be passed, all you need is a majority in the Senate who recognizes their authority and just starts removing justices. Don't usually do it, which they should. You should just start removing guys. The only time you want to do it though is you have to have control of the Senate and the president at the same time. Because how do you get those guys in place in the first place? It says, how do you get them here? How do they get here? Right here from the Senate. Okay. Most important thing here on this section, Article Section 2, read this. The judicial power, now this is going to be very important, the wording on this, read this closely. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or which shall be made, under their authority, semicolon, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, semicolon, to controversy, here's the key, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, boom, to controversies between two or more states, and between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, and between citizens of the same state claiming land grants of different states. What are you recognizing here? For them to get involved, what has to be the case? Has to involve two or more states. So if the state of Texas decides to convict a criminal in the state of Texas for violating Texas state law in Texas, and they decide to kill him, can the Supreme Court intervene? No. Roe versus Wade was a case that came out of, where did it come out? Where it came out. This is the thing that upsets me. Roe and Wade were both citizens of the state of, I don't know, whatever it was. They were citizens of the same state. Abortion was illegal in that state. I think it might have even been Texas. And it was tried under that state law. She was convicted under that state law, and she argued that I should have the right. And they said no. How did it end up in the hands of the United States Supreme Court?
Politics.
Illegally. There's no need for federal jurisdiction. The federal government just reached down and said, you can't make that law. Now they would argue that they're not a party to it. They're not a party to the case. Period. It's internal matter of that state. Now, they could have figured it out by making it, by maybe, I don't know how you would get one. One goes to another state, it just wouldn't happen. What recently happened that overturned Roe versus Wade? A couple years ago. In the Supreme Court. What did they do? They kicked it back down to the states, where it should have been in the first place, which halfway solved the problem. I believe, I'm not mistaken, abortion is illegal here in the state of Kentucky, correct? Yes? I think it is. Hopefully. We're almost there. Gentlemen, we just got a few minutes left. Hang in with me. Okay, I'm just pointing out the key thing. Let's skip the rest of of Article 2. Okay, Article 3. So those are the main powers, just so you know what's left. Article 4 basically talks about treason, right? Interstate laws, marriage license, things like that. This is interesting that, Article 4, full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. This is a great debate. Homosexual gets married in the state of California, moves to the state of Kentucky. Is homosexual law legal in the state of Kentucky? I don't think it is. It's not recognized. So are they married in the state of Kentucky? I don't know. I say
Yes. It would be the same as being unfortunate in the state of illegal.
Well, so if the state of California grants them a marriage license and they move to Kentucky, this is exactly the debate that goes on. Does the state of Kentucky have to recognize that license? State of California would say, yes, you do, for the interstate compact right here, Article 4. That's their argument, right? You get to force the argument, correct? If I issue a license here, you have to honor it in your state. If I make you a general contractor in the state of Kentucky, that license should be honored in the state of Indiana. They don't. Driver's license. So driver's licenses are fairly commonly I issue a driver's license here in Kentucky, can you drive in California? Yes, you can. So they would argue a marriage license should be the same way. We'd argue, no. To which they'd say, well, you have to follow the laws. And then we turn around and go, well, will you in the state of California honor my concealed carry license? No. Why not? Guns are dangerous. You can't have them in the state of California. We issued the license. You have to let our guy carry his concealed weapon in your state. No, we won't. Oh, but you want us to honor your marriage license. You get the debate?
I think it should be where the marriage license state has to allow it, but can recommend that each private property disallow.
But you understand, this is where technically we're supposed to honor everybody else's licenses. That's kind of what that's the idea. But you get the debate now, right? There's some force behind it. The Constitution says you have to honor that marriage license. That's been,
So says they have to honor concealed carry license.
I agree. There's your counter debate. So
Just allow both.
Exactly.
fine, yeah, we'll do it. We'll honor your license, and I'm carrying my weapon into your state. How do you feel about that? And they won't, right? So that's a good counter argument when that comes up. All right. Article 5. We're almost there, guys. Article 5. There's only 9 of these, and we go really fast. 2/3. That's for amendments. We talked about that. Do you want to change the Constitution? Article 5 is how you change the Constitution. They can propose amendments. Article 6 talks about debts and debt collection. Hold on, there's more that talks about. Where's my little notes here? Article 4, 5. Article 6 says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And lawful treaties become law. Let me find it. Constitution, second paragraph. This Constitution and the laws of the United States should be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. That's interesting. Particularly that treaties become the supreme law of the land. Well, that's a little challenging. Okay, Article 7, last one. Ratification by 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution. That's it. 9 states. Incidentally, when they sent it out to be ratified of the 13 colonies, guess what state refused to ratify it?
Arizona.
Yeah.
What's that?
Arizona.
They weren't around yet. Vermont. Ethan Allen and Green Mountain Boys. We ain't part of y'all's union. Told you we fought for a different war in the first place. Okay, so when they first drafted the Constitution of the United States, this is important. When they first drafted it, this first paragraph that says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, the first draft of this, when it went out, said, we the people of the states of, and there was a whole list of all the states. And then it went out, and like 2 of the states, Vermont being one of them, wouldn't ratify it. Like, what do we do now? They're on the list. They didn't sign it. So they went to change it, and it went back out again, and one of the other states didn't like something in it. So they said, fine. We the people of the United States. That's what they changed it to, specifically for that purpose. So, okay, all the states that want to sign this now, there you go. Generic term, we the people of the United States. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop here for, first of all, we're out of town. But here's the point. We're going to start rolling through wars now. We got the foundation set, right? We understand the morality of conflict. We understand about disobeying tyrants, when and where and why and how, right? We understand the United States Constitution for which we fought a war and established. We understand how it was established. We understand how the government's supposed to be run and governed. The rest of our history is going to talk about whether or not we've been following the very laws we've established. That's what we're talking about. And every time we go through a war, we're going to ask ourselves the questions: did we conduct our war ourselves lawfully? Did we have a right to fight that war? Did we fight it lawfully? Did we follow our own laws? Or not? And we'll go through a bunch of them so you guys can see a pattern. You guys can pull out the pattern. And now, anytime anybody says such and such should be a law, what's the first thing you're going to do? Where am I going?
Article 1, Section 8.
Article 1, Section 8. I'm sorry, I don't see it as an enumerated power. Perhaps you can show me in the Constitution why that should be a law. Just hand him your Constitution. You know what answer you're going to get? Oh. Yeah, well, that's not how it's done. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the Constitution was the law of the land. Am I mistaken in that point? Because it says it's the law of the land. This is much like when we defend the Bible, right? Is the Bible any good? Well, yeah. Why? Because it says it's good. It's self-attesting. So is the Constitution. It's self-attesting. It is the supreme law of the land. You guys with me? All right. Let's go through homework, and we'll let you guys wrap it up for tonight. And I'm going to give you guys some fun stuff going on forward. Okay. On the back of your handouts is the homework. I'm going to write it out so take a picture. Let's see here. You got some readings to do, not much. You can do a lot of it on your computer. I want you to research the following. Just get a flavor of these. War of 1812. War of Texas Independence. God bless Texas. Sure, I'm missing some letters in there. War with Mexico. The Missouri Compromise. Read that. Doesn't take long. Read Patrick Henry in your book, Patrick Henry, Slavery's Lamentable Evil. Read Missouri blank.
Compromise.
I want you to research biblical slavery, Old and New Testament. That's important. We're going to get our terms defined. This is going to help us solve a lot of problems as soon as we define some terms. Read Politically Incorrect Guide. American History, of which you've all been issued one. Chapters 5 to 7. Got some reading to do. Additional individual assignments. Who doesn't have an individual assignment yet? Me. Thomas and Chandler, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me give you your assignments here. So let's see. Parr, you got Colonel Tarleton. Jensen, you got Swamp Fox. Foster, you got Dan Morgan. Walker, Arizona versus California, circa 60s. Water rights. Caleb, LA riots, circa 1998. Movie. This is optional. You don't actually have to watch this, but if you can, watch Hamilton. And then I need two more, right? 1 second. Pull up the next things I want you to cover real fast, and we'll be done in just a second. Constitutional history part. By the way, there's 13 parts of this. We just made it through part 4, and we're going to speed up. It'll get more interesting after this. No, we made it through part more than that. We made it through part 4 of the Constitution. Okay. We're going to read. Nope, we went through part 5. Hold on. We're doing good. We're over halfway. Okay. Thomas, you're going to research the Battle of New Orleans. And Chandler, I want you to research the Battle San Jacinto is what I want. I don't even know how to spell Jacinto. Jacinto, I think, is this.
Tell me what war that is. Just
Battle of New Orleans?
no. New Orleans.
San Jacinto? Which one are you doing?
New Orleans.
Battle of New Orleans? What war is that?
It
In 1814, took a little trip.
took a little trip.
Long Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. Took a little bacon, took a little beans. Fought the bloody British at the town of New Orleans. All right. There's that one. That's it. Let me take a picture of that. What questions? Let's go around the room. I want to know what questions you have as we wrap up. Questions or something you learned? I'll start with Chandler.
I forgot to send you a text last time about getting me a copy of the Patriots handbook.
Oh, yes. I will mail that to you. Let me make a note to myself. Mail. Mail PH to Chandler. Okay. That'll be Jensen's job. We'll drop one in the mail for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. What else, Chandler? Anything? Something you learned tonight? One thing.
Something I learned. One thing was about the battle with the spies and crossing the river. That was
Battle
cool.
Trenton.
Battle
Very
with Trent.
important point. Very good. Par.
That most of our laws are unconstitutional.
Yeah, they are. Foster.
A reverse slope,
Defense.
defense.
Amen. You guys probably remember we used to fight the bridge scenario at the church?
That's like my favorite
I've never
scenario.
been to a church.
Okay, you missed it. We had a specifically designed reverse slope scenario. You could not engage the enemy until you're fully on the bridge, and then it's too late because you're already in the crossfire. It's a nightmare to cross every time.
Unless you're the one shooting at it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun if you're the one doing the if you're one in the reverse
I
slope.
made a bet with, I'm pretty sure it was Bud, that I could kill 3 different people using only this pea shooter, single shot, pull back gun like this big, and I actually won.
It was a reverse slope.
It was reverse
There
slope.
you go.
It's so easy.
It is a reverse slope, absolutely. And we do it all the time. L-shaped ambushes. We just do it with different mentality, but you're doing actually a reverse slope defense. But I'll come back to that later when we teach advanced course. Walker.
That our voting, that the way we vote has changed so drastically.
It's a major change. It's causing us a lot of pain. Jensen. Okay, very good. Caleb, go ahead. What else? Very good. Good job, Jensen. That's a lot. Caleb.
Really don't. Constitution.
I say that, you're correct. We don't, and you guys need to know this. This is the battle of your generation. And Thomas.
Significant lack of power for all the other branches of the government, all 3 of them. Forward, that they've definitely overstepped over.
Amen. And when we get in executive orders, it's gonna be even more out of control. We're gonna get that pretty soon. Okay, guys, thank you. Just so you know, from this point forward, we're gonna accelerate pace. Accelerate pace is we're gonna be talking about wars and battles, and wars and battles are gonna go from one to the next to the next. We've laid the foundation. You've seen our main foundation. You understand the constitutional law we're operating under. You understand the biblical law we're operating under, and you understand the founding of our nation. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about wars. And we say what's good in this war, what's bad in this war, what was done right, what was done wrong. You need to know your history. You need to know your history. You guys have a war coming to your front. I don't know where, I don't know when, but it's coming. You know it. You sense it.
So it's gonna be.
So anyway. Okay, that's it. Let me stop recording. Thank you, Chandler. Have a good night, brother.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Mike.
They've got the printout of the